Okay, we're down to the final four in the WNBA. The semis get started on Sunday, and there are two fantastic best-of-5 series to determine who goes to the WNBA Finals. So let's preview those series. We're going to do it with the great journalist and host for NBC Sports, Natalie Esquire, joins me now. Nat, what's going on?
What's up, Dex? How are you?
I'm doing good. Loving these W playoffs. It's about to get even more intense. I'm really excited for both of these series. Really excited to talk to you. And Nat, let's start with the local team here, and it's the New York Liberty. They have a finals rematch in the semis. The Liberty, they've been dominant all season. The Aces, they are back-to-back defending champions. So in your opinion, what will be the key for each team to establish an advantage early in the series?
I mean, play perfect basketball. It's gonna be it's gonna be very hard, really. They both teams really have to play their best basketball. These teams know each other so well, so well. And it's really about which team just comes through and executes on their game plan the best, right? I think that New York would be very mistaken to come into this series and underestimate the Aces. And I don't think that they are. A friend of ours, Lucas Kaplan, he just put out his preview of the series, and he said when he asked Sandy Bronzello, about Asia Wilson, like did she go back and review film from the matchups early in the season? She said, "Why would I?" Exactly. Why would you? Because throw out anything that happened during the season. Throw it out. We should not be looking to the regular season for what these two teams are. We should look to the regular season to understand the skills and abilities of these players. But there's so many things that have changed about both of these teams since those matchups. Leone is now firmly in the starting lineup. I expect that to continue. The Aces, though their last 10 games of the season, they went 9-1. Over that period of time, they were the best offense and defense in the league. They were. They had the best net rating overall. So while that doesn't make up for the whole year, they started playing really great basketball at the right time. And then also Stewie, she was struggling earlier in the season with her 3-point shot. She seems to be looking great. Sabrina had some struggles to close the season. She's looking great again. These teams, the matchups just look different. Vegas came into New York, just before the season ended, and while they lost, they almost pulled off a win, and they didn't have Asia Wilson. So these teams, it's going to be about who can execute best on their game plan. And, I would say what New York doesn't want to do is fall into any bad habits like they normally do. They don't want to get into a game where they are settling for three. So if the three ball is not falling early, Sabrina needs to be going downhill. She needs to be attacking. They need to be moving the ball. No one can try to ISO ball, try to just take it into their hands, because I think Vegas would want them to do that, right? So they need to avoid falling into old bad habits or anything like that. Likewise for Vegas. They need to make sure that they don't fall asleep on defense. They haven't been the best team guarding the 3-point line this season. As I mentioned, their defense has went into another notch, kicked it up. Chelsea Gray is looking like herself again. And so that's going to be a big thing. Like, are we getting the same Chelsea Gray that we've now been seeing in the playoffs, and who kind of came on at the end of the season? And what will that mean for them to have to deal with that matchup, right? And Tiffany Hayes, Tip, is a different element that you know, the Aces didn't have last season. And this season, the Liberty, they have a much deeper bench. So it's like these teams know each other, but so much has changed about their teams.
No, you're right. So much has changed, and you can't look at everything from the regular season, although the Liberty did win all three matchups head to head against the Aces. But it's the playoffs, different ball game, different stakes. So got
Yeah.
to look at it that way. All right, so in this series, you've got the last two league MVPs going head to head, Asia Wilson and Breanna Stewart. Does either player have to play like an MVP in this series for their team to win that?
Of course, you always need your best player to play like an MVP, but I think that can look differently, right? Depending on the team. Do I think the Aces need Asia to be scoring like the way she was earlier in the season, basically being their entire offense, I would say no. I would say, in fact, if they have to rely on Asia in that way, they likely will not win the series, right? You want to make sure that that scoring is more balanced. Chelsea Gray is getting everyone involved, that they're moving. And when they're doing that, they're playing the best version of Aces basketball. And then if you need to go to your MVP in the closing minutes, because that's what you need to do, then she's there to do that. Similar for Stewie, same thing. Like Sabrina, Leone and Sabrina were, were the best player in game 1 and game 2, respectively, in the first round of the playoffs, right? So Stewie didn't have to like go into some extra gear or anything like that. So she has the depth on that team. She has the supporting cast that it doesn't have to be the Stewie show. When they need her to be the Stewie show, when it's time to be the Stewie show, she can do that. But it doesn't have to be, let's rely on Stewie. And if they're sharing the ball and they're moving it around, she's going to play well too. So they can't get a Stewie who sort of faded, like the one last year in the finals, who I think was overutilized. So the fact that they've strengthened their bench, right, and they don't have to overutilize her, I think, playing the Aces in the second round is actually good for them, because we would have all maybe loved to see this in the finals as like a finals rematch, but the postseason is also a game of, battle of attrition. She will have fresher legs. She will be fresher because just naturally this is the second round, the semis, and not the finals.
And we will see how that plays out. MVPs got to play like MVPs, but you don't want to have to rely on them all the time. Okay, go ahead, Nat.
I will say this before you move on, though. Mm-hmm. Do they both need to play like MVPs? That was your original question.
Yes.
They will, and yes, but I do think that Las Vegas has the best player in the series, and I do think it's not like, oh, Asia's the best player, but they're the same level of player. I think Asia is her own tier.
I would agree with that. She is the best player in the world for sure, no doubt about that. Moving over to the other series, Nat, we've got the Connecticut Sun against the Minnesota Lynx. These were the two top teams in defensive rating during the regular season, although we don't want to look all into the regular season. So what or who can be the X factor in this series for either team in your eyes?
Yeah, I mean, now it's going to sound like I'm contradicting myself, but it's not that you can't look at the regular season, it's just that I think for champions, like proven champions, they always have a different gear that they can go to, and you can't necessarily just look to the regular season as the end all be all. In this situation, the Connecticut Sun won the regular season series with against the Lynx this year. So some people might say, well, look, they won it 2-1. All those games were pretty close, except there was one where Fee got actually injured in that game. So, I sort of put an asterisk on that one. But when it comes to these two teams, I just think that Minnesota is the better team. And I think they have the best player in this series, and that's Nafisa Collier. In terms of X factors, listen, I think that a lot of people can be X factors on either team. I think for the Lynx, that could be someone like a Bridget Carlton. She's been phenomenal. And you want to avoid, if you get into a clutch time moment, her seeing that ball, because she seems to be queen clutch, and she will always hit that shot that sort of secures the win for them. Nafisa's steady, so she's going to always be Nafisa Collier, and she had a tremendous first round. The clear, like, if there was a playoff MVP, she's so far, like, clearing and leading that race. Courtney Williams is another X factor for Minnesota. She just knows how to steady things. Their game 1 against the Sun last round. Against the Mercury. They let the Mercury sort of back in a game that they had a big lead, and it was Courtney Williams who came in and sort of steadied the ship. She's a mid-range assassin. You can always count on her to be reliable and make smart decisions. So I would probably look to one of those two players. Like, Nafisa has her role. Kayla McBride have their roles. They have to do what they normally do. But I would, sort of probably look to those two players. All right. When it comes to the Connecticut Sun, I don't know. It says Ty Harris is questionable. She got injured in the first round. So I would say the X factor here is the Marina Mabrey. If she can continue to shoot the ball like she shot in the first round, the Connecticut Sun, their offense is always the thing. So if she can continue to open up the floor for them like that and knock down those shots, and Dewana Bonner, I think, is probably their other X factor. That probably sounds a little crazy because you rely on Dewana Bonner. She's really important to the team, but her offense near the end of the season skidded a little bit. But in the last series, she was great on defense, great on offense. So I would be paying most attention to those two players because Alyssa Thomas is the engine. She's going to do what she has to do. But I think if Marina Mabrey can remain consistent, that helps their offense. And if I don't have to question their offense, they can win that series. But their offense is always a question.
I would agree with that about the Sun. We'll see how that one plays out there. Now, you mentioned Nafisa Collier. She's put up numbers, as you said, in the first round against Phoenix. And the Sun are an excellent defensive team. We know that. So what are the keys, if you're Connecticut, to slowing down Fee? How do you slow her down?
I mean, the Connecticut Sun can slow down anyone. Whether they jumped from number 1 to 2 or even sometimes 3, they were a top 3 defense all season. They just have the ability to do that. So I don't expect Fee to put up the numbers she was putting up in the first round because the Phoenix Mercury, their defense is just not that good. They're just not as good of a team. But the Connecticut Sun are. So if Nafisa Collier is putting up numbers like that, then the Connecticut Sun probably have no chance of winning. But I expect this to be a gritty series. I actually think, even though I'm on record saying I think, the Lynx have played the best basketball this season, I've had them number 1 in my power rankings. I think very highly of them. I do think Connecticut just poses some interesting matchup challenges for them. So I don't think these are going to be high scoring games. I think their defense will really be a challenge. So I think it's going to be like a close, gritty series. I think they will be able to slow them down. And if they can come up with enough offense, then they could potentially win that series. I wouldn't bet on that, but they could potentially win it.
All right, so you wouldn't bet on that, which might tell me where you might be leaning into your prediction. So we're going to go into predictions here because for people who don't know, Natalie does a fantastic job with her WNBA power rankings. And this year through the season, I've had a bunch of people reaching out to me, particularly Liberty fans, saying, where does Natalie have us? Where does she have us in the power rankings? And Natalie, I've shared that with you, right? So we don't have power rankings here, but we've got predictions. So what are your predictions for both of these semifinal matchups? Who do you have going to the WNBA Finals?
Well, I'm going to tell you what I think if you're making like a basketball argument, what the predictions probably should be that are reasonable. And then I'm going to tell you what my gut is.
Okay.
So, I mean, I think based on the way the Liberty played all season, having the number 1 record, having swept the season series against the Aces, and having home court, that would be the team that most people should pick to win the series. And I actually think there's more pressure on them to win the series and to win a championship this year than I think is on the Aces to three-peat. One of these two teams going out in the second round is going to be crazy because they are 2 of the top teams in the league. And I think a lot of people thought we'd be seeing them again in the finals this year, or at least early in the season. So I think most reasonable people would pick the Liberty. But I know Liberty fans are expecting me to pick the Aces, and they are right. I'm going to pick the Aces to win that series. And I'm just not betting against 2-time champions, but mostly I'm not betting against A'ja Wilson. And this is consistent with me. So this is not a Liberty bias. If you know me, I always lean towards the team that has the best player in the series. If both teams are really good, if both teams have a lot of talent, both teams are a great offense, a great defense, then I always think the advantage goes to the team that has the best player in the series. And that is clearly A'ja Wilson. So I would pick the Aces. That's not a strong prediction. I'm not saying that the Liberty can't win. I think this is going to be a long series. It's going 4 or 5 games. I actually think the Aces probably need to win it in 4. I don't know about like coming back to New York to have to play a closeout game. But I think it's going to be a 4 or 5 game series. I don't think it's going to be short. I think it's going to be really good. And I think either team can win. But if you're telling me I got to pick one, I would pick the Aces. As far as the Sun and the Lynx, same thing. Connecticut's offense always concerns me. They're going to be playing a better team than the Fever. I think a lot of people got a little too excited about the Fever and their post-Olympics run and kind of put them on the level of these other teams. I don't think that they ever were. Their last 5 games of the season, I think they had a losing record. I think they were like 2-3 or something like that. So against better teams, I don't think that they were as good. And so, but now Connecticut is playing a team that's really good. They're a top team. They have the #2 record in the WNBA. And I also believe that they have the better player in that series. So I've been saying all year the Minnesota Lynx are going to the finals. I know Connecticut feels disrespected, but I think the Lynx have also been disrespected this season. I think they are for sure going to the finals, and I'm picking them to win that series.
All right, so you're going with the Aces, you're going with the Lynx.
Mm-hmm.
I do not think you made some New York Liberty fans happy. Some people might say that you are a hater. I do not think you are a hater because I think you brought and explained a lot of the facts, but I liked it. You broke it down. I knew you were going to, the way you set that up, I knew you were going to break the hearts of the Liberty fans. I knew it. I saw it coming a mile away, but I love it. I love the picks, Nat. I think both of these series are going to be fantastic. You and I will both enjoy them. You will be doing a lot of coverage on them. So I appreciate you. Thank you for coming on and breaking it down with me. Everybody, that is Natalie Esquire of NBC Sports. Check out her work. You can check out her power rankings, but you got to respect those predictions as always. Natalie, I appreciate you. Thank you, sis.
Thank you.